December's wintry breath is already clouding the pond, frosting the pane, obscuring summer's memory. Welcome to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. I'm your host, Ramya Amudan. This quote on our intro was by John Geddes from A Familiar Rain, and this quote is a little bit of weather, a little bit of winter, and a little bit of December specifically. And I think that December is still that lovely part of winter, that festive, that beautiful, that sparkly, shiny, pretty, just enough cold to tingle your toes, but not enough cold to burrow. And that's why this quote stood out to me. Obscuring summer's memory also kind of talks to a little bit of we forget the warmth and we forget the outdoors and we forget the sunny times when the cold hits us. And that can be kind of hard, but that's okay because we're still enjoying the festivities and the slight chill of winter in December. And as we wrap an entire year's worth of shows, of memories, of reflections, of beauty, of challenges, of whatever, the whole year package, we think, hey, December's still kind of nice. Now, let's take a look at the CELA homepage. Go to celalibrary.ca, and right on the homepage we can find these 3 featured titles. Black Waterfalls by Asma Zihanat Khan. This is a police procedural fiction which we did feature a couple episodes ago, so check out the pause or play back from that conversation. We also have on the featured titles page Artificial Divide by Robert Kinjet. This is an anthologies, and the last one up there is Love from Mecca to Medina by S.K. Ali. And this is a family stories. It's also categorized as a contemporary romance that you can check out. It's one of my favorite times of the month because we're going to be checking in with Sara Hillis in a couple minutes on Know Your Narrator. And she's featuring somebody who is about to celebrate a December birthday, and he's doing very, very well. Has recorded a ton. You may know him by his for real name, Simon Vance. You may also know him by one of his couple aliases. We're going to talk about the significance of that as well, but quite interesting talking about aliases in a narration point of view. We'll get into it. Also, this narrator has lent his voice to almost every kind of title you can imagine. So from kids' books to serious reads to long fantasy to autobiographies, absolutely everything under the moon. So check him out. We're going to feature it on Know Your Narrator with Sara Hillis. This is AMI Audiobook Review. This is AMI Audiobook Review, and we are checking in with a contributor. Every month, we check in with Sara Hillis. She features a notable narrator in the world of audiobooks, and we shout out the voices behind our favorite listens and get to know their fascinating lives and background of these individuals. So, Sara, we've got someone special here today. Who are we chatting about?
Well, we're chatting about Simon Vance, and he's probably one of the most popular narrators, I think, in commercial audiobook narration. I think it's fair to say that a friend of mine really wanted me to do this one back when I first told him I was doing the podcast. And so I don't know if he'll listen, but hopefully he will. Simon Vance has a birthday this month. He's turning 67. So I thought, why don't we do that? Why don't we deal with him? So he of course he's been around in the commercial narrating space for about 30 odd years. So Simon Vance he's been around the commercial narrating space for about 30 odd years. And so he's narrated a whole ton of books for, I think, almost every publishing house you can think of.
Really?
Blackstone Audio. I think he's done Audible stuff. He's done Random House stuff. He's not sort of stuck on one publishing house. He kind of shops around, I think, which is cool. He was born in Brighton, England in 1955. He got his start on radio as a presenter and newsreader for the BBC in the 70s. And then in 1983, he joined BBC Radio 4, and around that same time, he went to narrate books for the RNIB, the Royal National Institute of Blind People, I think is what it's called now. And he considered that his narration apprenticeship. Of course, he didn't get paid to write these books because it's volunteer.
But a good place to start for audiobook narration, at
yeah,
least.
really good play. I mean, you get a wide variety of stuff. He'd been an actor as well, so they always like to find volunteers with, good voices and acting experience for those kinds of studios. Then he moved to the United States, and he realized that theater wasn't going to give him the money that he needed to make a living. And a relative mentioned commercial audiobook narration, and so he started with Blackstone Audio in the early 90s, I think it was. And interestingly enough, he actually narrated under 2 different aliases as well, which I thought was the case, but I just wasn't
sure. Recognizing his voice?
Yeah, but I just wasn't sure. So they were Richard Matthews and Robert Whitfield. So if you've heard those names, it's actually Simon Vance.
Okay. I mean, obviously we know of pen names or aliases for writers, but for narrators, what did it sound like? Well, how does he sound in his other forms?
Well, pretty much like himself, I think. I'm not really sure why. He said a number of narrators did this back in the 90s, and I'm not really sure why, other than maybe some of them didn't want their acting name to be associated with their narrating name, maybe, that's just a speculation on my part. I don't know.
Yeah, because really the other way I imagine is you put on a whole different demeanor and voice, and then this is your voice acting voice. But if that's not the case, then I'm curious about the root behind that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Richard Matthews and Robert Whitfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's narrated so many kinds of books, like a lot of these really well-known ones, fiction, non-fiction, like memoirs and biographies, historical fiction, including Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall stuff, at least one of them for sure, Bring Up the Bodies, that one an Audie, I believe. And he won several Audie awards from the American Publishing Association for his work. He's hosted the Audie event in 2018, so he got to actually host it. I don't think I remember that. Mike and I usually try to listen to it. I don't know if I remember him doing that, but maybe I didn't listen that year. I don't know. I would have been, hey, that's Simon Vance. How
right. Cool. Yeah, because you're a fan. Yeah.
Yeah. He narrates. I think he's best well known for narrating the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and those books by Stieg Larsson.
Okay.
Which I haven't read, I must admit, but I think that a lot of people really acclaim him for those books. He's also read a prequel to A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. So that's Fire and Blood, about the Targaryens. If you want to get into Game of Thrones, I'll try to, not do that because I can get pretty esoteric about Game of Thrones.
Okay.
But he's done that apparently, which I haven't read. My favorite of his that I've listened to, and I've listened to a fair amount, some Dickens, some Dune. He does work with the Dune series for, what is it called? Renaissance Audio, I think, is doing these now, where it's sort of multi-voice and different points of view and that kind of thing. But it's still a book. It's not a drama. So that's science fiction. But
and why did you enjoy him?
Doing any of his books, I think, that I've read, it's just he inhabits every character in a really nice way. You can tell which character is talking, even if the writer doesn't say said so and so. He really does a nice job of doing that, and he matches his narration to the tone of the writing. I think in whatever kind of book he's reading, I think he can be serious, he can be funny, he can be, action oriented, he can be reflective. He's just got that ability to do what he needs to do.
Is he a performer? Like, would you find him very theatrical? I mean, it sounds like his narration side started very young, even though he did go to LA and try the acting thing out. But I'm curious about, does he come off as an actor, as a comedian, as these people?
I think that he's able to modify his performance for the narration space. I think that he's not overblown. He doesn't go over the top, I don't think. But he's less subtle, I would say, than a Scott Brick, maybe.
Right.
But he's like, for the sorts of books he often reads, I think it works. He read Mervyn Peake's Gormenghast series, which is totally, it's the kind of fantasy that if you really love fantasy, you'll read it. But if it's it's a little boring because it's a whole different way of telling a story. It's very slow moving, very minute detail of character more than plot, I would say. And so if I had read these books in Braille, I think I would have just gone, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? But Simon Vance really brought it to life for me in a way that I don't know that I could have done for myself. So
really,
it was really cool that way. He's just done so much. He has some funny stories. Like, he did a biography or an autobiography of Rod Stewart, so he narrated it. And I guess he got to meet Rod twice, and he was very, very happy about meeting Rod. He was like, wow, how cool is that? I got to actually meet this guy, this rock icon,
Yeah. And I guess that goes to the question of, has he met a lot of the people he was reading about or reading from, the writers, the people behind the books?
Yeah, he's met a few for sure. He really likes Guy Gavriel Kay, who's a Canadian kind of alternative history sort of / fantasy author. It's hard to classify him, but he's narrated some of his books, and he really liked him a lot. And he seems like a personable guy, so I can understand that.
Right. Okay.
And he was reading a book by Alan Moore called Jerusalem, which is one of these just sprawling, I guess, kind of family hometown kind of saga things from about 2010. And this was in England. He flew to England. He spent time with Alan Moore walking around his town, because a lot of it takes place in his hometown, and just to kind of really get a feel for what he's reading about and who he's reading about, because Alan Moore's, it's not about him, but it kind of is, sort of thing. So it's his own experiences too. He really does like to prepare well. I know in an interview someone said, well, how do you prepare for your readings, your narrations? And he just said, well, I read the books, but that was kind of his facetious answer, because there's more to it than that. I mean,
yeah. But you would think, but at the same time, stating that obvious is a pretty big point, right? Like, to say, well, I have to read the books. It's kind of a, how else can I prep for this kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. He's apparently a Doctor Who fan. He loves Doctor Who. He's compared the book, the narration experience, to the TARDIS, which is Doctor Who's phone booth, time machine thing. Mm-hmm. The Doctor, I should say, not Doctor Who. And he said, like, you can go across the whole universe and then come back home in time for tea, just by reading a story. And he really thinks that story is the main thing. He doesn't care how long or short the book is, just as long as it's got, good storyline, good characters, that kind of thing. He'll read whatever they give him, right, for the most part,
Okay. I can't remember who we talked about, but a couple months ago we mentioned a narrator who was like, pass on certain things. So this is a totally different case.
Yeah, he says he doesn't have a whole lot of choice. He can they give me what they give me. What am I going to do? But he can sort of say, okay, I've read enough of these. Can I not read any more of these types? That sort of thing. But
does he say anything about what he tries to bring for the listener?
He basically just tries to understand the author's intent, I think, and to bring that to whatever he's reading. I think he's very much one of these narrators that's just like, look, I can contribute, but I'm not the person that wrote the book. So I need to know what the author is trying to do, so that I can bring it to you as a listener, without being too much of me in there, I guess.
That's interesting because, I compare this to audio description a little bit sometimes, right? And when the describer of a movie or TV show or series is describing, some people are on the side of the spectrum where they're like, oh, you need to bring the scene to life for us. Insert yourself. We want to hear you. And then others who are like, no, I don't really want to know that the narrator's there. Obviously they're the part of the series making it accessible for me, but it's more of like a background, and we don't really want to get that personality. And even describers have their own takes on these, right? So it's interesting to hear the narrator who says, well, it's really the writer that's bringing this. I'm just kind of that middle person bringing that to you.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that he doesn't do a lively job of it. It's
Absolutely.
just that he takes the liveliness from the writer and not as much from himself. That you can't divorce yourself totally from anything that you do, any art that you do. But I think he's really keen on, making the book accessible for someone that's not looking at it in print and trying to bring it to some kind of life. Because if you're reading it in print, you're going, or Braille or whatever, you're going, well, this is what I think the character is like or whatever. But the narrator has to kind of inhabit that for you to keep you interested.
Exactly. You're creating that character for the person, rather than, like you said, reading it in print is you and your imagination, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So has he said no to books or something along those lines where he's like, I'm not really going to do this genre anymore?
Not as such. Well, he hasn't said that he said no, I guess. He said, I have done, but he won't say what he said no to. I don't think I've ever found any info about what he said he wouldn't do anymore.
Oh, that's fun.
He's sort of like every narrator. He says, there are books I've read, and I'm like, why does this book exist? I don't really, but that's not my job I'm not going to tell you what books they are. I just read them, and I hope you liked them if you did. I just didn't like them. But but you're never going to know which ones they are from me.
No.
I'm never going to tell you.
Right, right. Smart. Okay, so what did he enjoy narrating? Did he talk about that?
He's enjoyed lots of them. He really liked. He has a lot of his books are out of print, if you can say print, now because of rights issues and companies going under and that kind of thing. That's how long he's been narrating for, right?
Wow.
So he's narrated a bunch of James Bond, and he really liked the James Bond stuff. He's narrated, a couple of more British things that have gone just away. Like his stuff isn't there anymore, and he's sad about that. But he I think he enjoys most of what he does because, again, he really loves Dickens. He sort of facetiously said, I wish Dickens was still writing today. I would actually, I'm just reading some Dickens right now. It would be very interesting if he was writing today, I have to tell you.
Wow.
Because he was always a very big, social reformer kind of guy, right? So, so he said, I didn't choose Dickens, but they gave it to me a lot because, of course, I'm a British person, and Dickens was British, and they want that kind of voice for the stories. But I really love doing it, so I didn't set out to narrate Dickens, but I'm glad I got to. He's narrated a lot of it, so yeah.
I love hearing about that. Because these narrators, they've done hundreds, if not thousands, of narrations, and this guy, he started as a kid, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was 6 years old, and there was a microphone given to him, and he recorded Winnie the Pooh when he was
Aw.
6 years old.
And then spun into his career. But, because knowing that, right, knowing people who've done decades of career building, and then to kind of pick out the moments that they loved or the moments that stick with them. I mean, to say, I wish Charles Dickens was still writing is a pretty significant, obviously points to a pretty significant time in his career.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. And your first exposure to Simon?
I think that my first book, other than possibly The Aliases, which would have been something C.S. Lewis, I think.
Right.
My first book was, I think, Great Expectations. Again, Dickens.
Mm-hmm.
Dickens, and just really liked his style. And I didn't mention this to you, but he's also a character in the Sandman stuff.
Oh, yeah?
All three audio adaptations. He plays Lucian the librarian, and he's very good.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about the Audible.
Yes, the Audible adaptations of Sandman, not Netflix. No,
No,
the librarian's a woman in Netflix.
Yes,
actually.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's amazing, and we know how you and Mike love the Audible adaptations of Sandman.
They're great.
Amazing. Well, this is really cool because, I mean, I feel like we learned a lot about Simon. Anything more on what you believe he brings to books? Like the kind of, we talked about the tone and his performance aspects and things like that, but anything else on the kind of mood he puts you in, or can that really depend on the type of book? I think the short answer is yes. But, certain narrators have like a thick presence, right? Their voice or their tone or something like that. But some of them are more soothing, I find. And you talked about the longer books that he's able to bring to life. So with those, do you think of any words to describe?
I think really he's just got this charming voice. It's just sort of nice to listen to, even if he's reading a dramatic, horrible kind of part of the book. He doesn't put you off. Like, I don't find him off-putting. I find him he just draws you in. He's like you're sitting down on the floor as a kid and someone's reading you a story. It's I don't know, there's that element to it. Like, you just want to drink tea and listen to Simon Vance. I don't know. It's
There you go. That's a lovely line. You just want to drink tea and listen to Simon Vance. Oh man, amazing. Well, I think that it's nice that he wants to work with the people, right? Work with the authors. He finds a lot of meaning in hearing from the people behind the books, I guess, and gives so much of that credit to the writers, to the publishers, takes direction. It really shows in, I guess, how long he's been able to do this and uphold his career.
Yeah, I think he's a worker. I think that's the main thing, and the best narrators are. They just do their job. They like their job. They do their job. They don't have too much ego about it, and they just keep on going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it shows because he's now worked with, like you said, a ton of different publishers and big names in the audiobook world.
Yeah.
I wonder if his aliases got the same kind of treatment.
I think they were mostly done under Blackstone, if I remember correctly. But
that's pretty funny, and I love how there's this variety of, as you said earlier too, but fantasy and all these different genres, and random children's books that have also made the list.
Yeah, he's I think he's narrated actually Winnie the Pooh as an adult, and he's done several and he'd be great at, like, he's awesome at that kind of. I think he'd be great as a children's narrator. Like, I could imagine him doing Alice in Wonderland just wonderfully, or something like that. I don't know if he has. I actually don't know, but he's done tons of different books, and he doesn't care. Like, he's happy to do them.
Yeah. Well, I love it. A humble but obviously incredibly talented narrator.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, any final words before we wrap?
I'll just hope everybody has a great holiday and that kind of thing. And it's been great doing this so far, and look forward to 2023.
Oh, yeah. Tons. At least 12 more narrators to come in the next year. Well, well, we appreciate it. We've highlighted some incredibly big names with you this year, and super appreciate you doing the deep dive and bringing these names and voices to the table. We'll chat with you in Jan.
Yeah.
Sara Hillis joining us for Know Your Narrator, and today we feature Simon Vance, turning 67 on December 16th, inducted into the Audible Hall of Fame, Writers Hall of Fame, as well as one of Audiophile Magazine's Golden Voices. That's a wrap for this week's episode of AMI Audiobook Review, and until next week, happy audiobook listening.